הרוב לא.
חכה שזה מתחיל.
יש בחוץ, מישהו יכול לתור שם, אני סולחת לך, תסתכל עליי.
צילמתי אותה.
אני כרטיסים אני כרטיסים בתקופה הראשונה. אף לא הכיר את זה. אני לא נורקסי לאה, פשוט החולצות התקצצו קצת בכניסה, כניסה מהחומר, תחבט.
שלום לכולם, ערב טוב. אנחנו רוצים להתחיל. תודה לכם שבאתם. רוב הערב הזה יתקיים באנגלית, מכיוון שיש לנו אורחים מסלובקיה, ותכף נסביר את הכל. אז פחות או יותר העברית, כמעט העברית האחרונה שתשמעו הערב. כן, אחרי יוסי. אני רוצה רק להציג את תמר פריצקה, שתתחיל את הערב הזה עם שיר קצר. תמר, בבקשה. תודה רבה, תמר. יוסי, בעל הבית, רוצה לפתוח בכמה מילים. בבקשה, יוסי.
תקשיבו למילים. ערב טוב. דבר ראשון, בשם גילי, זוגתי ואני, אנחנו מברכים אתכם שבאתם. תודה שבאתם. תודה לאורחים. Thank you, all those who don't know Hebrew, to come here tonight. I will talk a little bit in Hebrew, and after it will be all yours. זה יום מיוחד היום. אישית, כל המשפחה של אבי נספתה באושוויץ. אבא, סבא שלו, דודים, דודות. זה דבר תמיד שמאוד נוגע לי, זה משהו שחצוב באיזושהי נקודה בתוך הנשמה שלי, כמו שאני חושב שהרבה אנשים מאיתנו. וכשאני מסתכל בחוץ, מה אנחנו עשינו עם זה, אנחנו הישראלים עם השואה, כשאני מסתכל איך אנשים נוהגים בכביש, ואיך מתנהגים בכנסת, ואיך מדברים אחד עם השני, ואיך מתייחסים לאלה ששרדו את השואה ולזרים, אני אומר לעצמי דבר מאוד מאוד עצוב שלא למדנו. מכיוון שמבחינתי המסר הגדול של השואה זה היה לאהוב את החיים, לכבד את האחרים, לכבד את עצמנו, ולצערי אנחנו לא עושים את זה. אנחנו לא מפרגנים ולא מגדילים ולא באמת נותנים את המקום שהיה ראוי אחרי 70 שנה. מה למדנו מזה? אני רוצה לעבור כעת לסיפור אחר של אותה בחורה ששמענו את המילים שלה, שאולי לא הקשבתם כל כך, זה לא כל כך קל. בחורה בשם אתי אילסון, שאולי חלק, רובם בטח לא שמעו אותה, זה דבר מפתיע, זה ספר שתורגם לעברית לפני 40 שנה, וכמעט אף אחד לא מכיר אותו. אתי הייתה בחורה הולנדיה, סיפור מאוד דומה לאנה פרנק, בחורה הולנדיה, היא עברה את כל התהליך עד שהיא נספתה באושוויץ, היא כתבה יומן. היומן מדהים, ספר שנקרא שמיים בתוכי, והוא מדהים מכיוון שלפני שהכל התחיל, היא עברה חניכה רוחנית. והיא מספרת איך זה לעבור את אושוויץ כחניכה רוחנית, כאישה שיש לה קשר הדוק עם הרוח. זה לא כל כך נוח, כי היא לא הייתה קורבן. והיא לא הייתה מסכנה. אני אקריא לכם כמה קטעים תכף מתוך הספר. היא גם לא הייתה גיבורה. היא פשוט הייתה תלמידה של החיים. היא מתארת את זה בצורה מאוד מאוד מרגשת, מאוד מהפכנית. היא מלמדת איך להיות נוכחים, במלוא מובן המילה, ואיך להיות מסוגלים להתמיר ולשנות את המציאות מתוך המקום הזה, לא מתוך קורבן. תראו איך אצלנו משתמשים בשואה, הרי אין שבוע שלא בעיתונות או אחד הפוליטיקאים ספר שואה, אושוויץ, תיזהרו, תפחדו, מלא מלא פחדים 70 שנה אחר כך. לא למדנו. אגב, היה אדם שמאוד הוקיר אותה, קוראים לו האפיפיור בנדיקטוס ה-16. לפני 3 שנים הוא עשה טקס למענה, והוא אמר בטקס הזה: אני מעלה בעיני רוחי את דמותה של אתי אילסון, נערה הולנדיה ממוצא יהודי שנספתה באושוויץ. בתחילת חייה היא הייתה רחוקה מהאל. היא גילתה אותו תוך התבוננות מעמיקה בעצמה. היא כתבה: יש באר עמוקה מאוד בתוכי. האל נמצא בתוכה. לעתים אני מגיעה אליו, לעתים קרובות יותר אבנים ובוץ סוגרים את פי הבאר, והאל קבור תחתיה. אז אני חייבת לחפור אליו מחדש. האפיפיור מוסיף ואומר, בחייה הגועשים וחסרי המנוח, היא גילתה את האל במרכז של הטרגדיה הגדולה של המאה ה-20, השואה. נערה עדינה ומאוכזבת. זו השתנתה בעזרת האמונה והפכה לאישה מלאת אהבה ושקט פנימי. והיא אמרה, אני חיה באינטימיות מתמדת עם האל. אני אקרא מספר משפטים קטן מתוך הספר שלה, שאני מאוד ממליץ לכם לקרוא, כי מבחינתי זה באמת ספר שמראה לנו איך אפשר להתמיר מתוך המקום הנורא הזה, גיא המוות, בסוף היא נספתה באושוויץ. ואני אומר בעצמי, אם היא הייתה יכולה להתמיר שם, אנחנו יכולים להתמיר פה. רק צריך להיות מודעים, לשנס כוחות ולעשות מעשה. יש בי רק אמון רב והכרת תודה על שהחיים יפים כל כך, ועבורי זה רגע היסטורי. זה רגע היסטורי לא משום שאני צריכה לגשת עוד מעט לגסטאפו, אלא שלמרות זאת, החיים נראים לי יפים. כל המשפטים לקוחים מתוך המסלול שלה מאמסטרדם דרך מחנות השמדה עד לאושוויץ. אסור לי ללכת לאיבוד בתוך מה שקורה סביב. צמחתי מתוך התוהו ובוהו הזה, ומוטל עליי מתוכו לעלות למדרגה גבוהה יותר. למרות כל הסבל והעוול שנעשה, אינני יכולה לשנוא. השנאה איננה פתרון. יש לנו עוד כל כך הרבה לשנות בעצמנו, שאין לנו בכלל זמן לשנוא את מי שאנחנו קוראים לו אויבים. בינתיים אנחנו עוד אויבים זה לזה. על כל אחד מאיתנו להתרכז בעצמו ולהשמיט בתוכו את הדברים שבגללם הוא רוצה להשמיט את האחרים. עוד שני משפטים שמאוד נוגעים לי. מוטב שנבין שכל גרעין של שנאה שאנחנו מוסיפים לעולם עושה אותו עוד פחות אנושי ממה שהוא. במשפט האחרון, זה כבר היה ממש במחנה וייסברוק לפני שהיא עלתה לרכבת לאושוויץ. החיים נפלאים ונשגבים. יבוא יום ונצטרך לבנות לנו עולם חדש. על כל פשע וכל זוועה עלינו לענות באהבה וטוב לב שהם תוצר של מאבק פנימי. מותר לסבול, אבל אסור להיכנע לסבל. תודה רבה לכם. אני קצת התרגשתי. אני רוצה לקרוא את השגריר של הרפובליקה הסלובקית שנמצא איתנו פה, מר פיטר אולייני. פליז.
גבירותיי ורבותיי, הרשו לי לארח אתכם באירוע הזה. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor and it's a great pleasure for me to be here today. This morning I was in Beit Theresienstadt, and yesterday I was in Yad Vashem, and I'm still full of emotions and food for thought. I think what you are doing today and what you are doing these days and is something that it's not only very important, but it's obligatory. It's a must for us and for the generations to come. And we are trying, the embassy and Slovak government is trying to do the same. Last year we opened in Sereď, that's the small city near Bratislava, the first Holocaust museum that is on the place of the former labor and transport and concentration camp. And you don't have to go to Sereď to learn about this story, because we are bringing the story here to Israel, and on 4th of May we are opening an exhibition about Sereď, about the camp, but also about the story about building the museum. So you are warmly welcome to visit the exhibition. It's going to take place in House of Quality, that's the museum in Jerusalem on the Hebron Road. That's just an example of our understanding of reminding things that happened and that we have to recall and remember. So thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very grateful to be here, and I'm very much looking forward to take part in this event. Thank you.
Thank you. בבקשה.
אז ערב טוב לכולם. Thank you very much. We're very honored to have you as our guest, and we're also very honored to have Jan Hlavica, a historian from Slovakia, as our guest tonight, and he will present the testimony. And we're also very honored to have Oli Peled here with us. Usually what happens in these occasions is that we remember by bringing a Holocaust survivor to give his testimony and tell us what happened there. This time the testimony is going to be a little bit different because this is, we will remember Daniel Lenard, who was Oli's uncle, and he didn't survive. He did his best to try to survive, mainly in order to try and save other people from what he saw. And Jan will tell his story. And Daniel also wrote, he aspired to be a writer, and he wrote his testimony many years ago, and we will read some parts of this testimony. It's very long and very, very powerful and hard to digest, but we will only read small parts of it this evening. So I just want to start the evening. I will read this in Hebrew because it was translated to Hebrew, so this is the only part of the evening that will be in Hebrew. ידידי היקר, ובוודאי תתפלא לשמוע לאחר שתיקה כה ממושכת, אבל אין זה באשמתי. בנסיבות שלא הייתה לי עליהן שליטה, הגעתי למצב כה מוזר והרפתקני מכל הבחינות, שאילולי הצד הטרגי שחזיתיו מבשרי ומעצביי ממש, היית יכול לחשוב שאין זו אלא מין אגדה מודרנית, שבה לא כבאגדות רגילות, לא הטוב הוא המנצח, אלא הרע, לא ידע של האצילות היא על העליונה, אלא של מין טירוף, שאין להשוותו לשום דבר שבא לעולם עד כה. Oli, I would like to start with you. You grew up with this missing uncle that you didn't really know what happened to him, your mother's older brother. Can you tell us a little bit how it was to grow up and what you knew of your uncle while you were growing up?
The truth is that I didn't know a lot about him, but I knew all my life somehow back in my mind that I had an uncle. That was very artistic, because this was the first thing that my mother always told me, that if I would know Daniel, I would have a very special relationship with him, because he had the same soul like me. He was very sensitive and he was artistic, and she think I missed. And the story about the testimony we didn't know for a long time. We just know he disappeared. My mother didn't know anything about it. So till around, I don't know, 30 years ago, we didn't know what happened to him. Just 30 years ago, when somebody discovered that this testimony was written in a book about the Holocaust of Slovakian was written in a book of Holocaust of Slovakian survivors, and it was always told about an unknown Jew from Slovakia. And one Jewish historian was making a doctorate about Slovakia Jews, and then she went to Kibbutz Ha'ogen. It was the kibbutz that my mother, when she came to Israel, it was the first place she went because her friends from Slovakia were living there. And one of her friends saw the testimony and saw somehow one of written names, and he says, well, this is Julius Leonard, his sister is living in Kfar Shmaryahu. And from that moment began a a big change in my house. My mother didn't know what to do with herself. She didn't understand if he's alive or dead or whatever, and she needed my help. And she called me and she says, somebody told me that Daniel wrote something, and I don't know if he's alive or dead or whatever. And I had to call this woman. I think it was 11 in the night, and to ask her, what about his doctor? Says, no, it's only a testimony. He's not alive, or we don't know anything about it. And that was the beginning of the story.
Jan Hlavica. I'd like to introduce him formally. He is a 38-year-old historian from the Institute of History at the Slovak Academy of Sciences. How did you come to research this specific person in your studies who happens to be Oli's lost uncle?
In 2014, I was approached by organizers of the specific historical and commemorative venue in Slovakia, which is called Vrba Wetzler Memorial, and is being organized for a few years in Žilina to commemorate another very important people in the Holocaust history, Rudolf Vrba and Alfred Wetzler, two escapees from Auschwitz from 1944, who were the authors or the source for the famous Auschwitz protocols. The organizers of the venue came with the idea to organize the conference and to have the Institute of History of Slovak Academy of Sciences in Bratislava as the guarantor. And they also wanted to do some new research within the Vrba Wetzler legacy, something that brings more light onto how the information about Shoah, about this genocide, was coming to the people still endangered by it, to Slovakia, to other countries, and so on. And we came to the conclusion that there are many things we still want to open and want to document. And I personally chosen the story of Dionys Leonhardt because by that time, by 2014, he was mentioned briefly, already named, as a young Slovakian Jewish man who escaped from Majdanek, came to Slovakia, gave important testimony, and then his traces somehow vanished in Hungary, and he was believed to die in Hungary, or nobody knew what happened. And then in 2015, without knowing that there is any Oli Pellet or any family, I went to Yad Vashem. I conducted some research, very intensive one, because I didn't have much time. I mean, my trip was quite short. And I found the testimony, the version which is in the diary of Rabbi Frieder, and then I also got in touch with Moreshet Archive in Tivat Chaviva, and they later sent me the more complete version, the one which has more pages. And after I came, I already started to gain more and more knowledge. But just before the conference, I thought to myself, I have to really do again the search for the family, because the one that I did before was unsuccessful. And finally, through the Genie webpage, I got to the profile of Clara, of the sister of Daniel or Dionys, and I found Oli through the Facebook. Just through the Facebook, I sent her a message, and I remember by the day that a few days before the conference, she started sending me scans, and it was just like a eruption, so much information. So that's how it all went.
Oli, just tell us in a few words what it was like for you to hear from Jan through Facebook one day, just out of the blue.
I think the moment I saw the letter, I think 2 seconds after I ran to him and says, somebody wrote me about Daniel, and a moment after I answered him, and I think some second after I begin to dig, to look for all the letters and pictures, whatever I have that can help him. But it's something, I can't explain it, but I know it was the dream of my mother to know what happened with her brother. And she passed away, and the moment I heard it, I knew that I'm going into it with all my power, and that's what happened.
So Jan is actually the special guest of Oli and all of us on this day. And Jan, if you can now please tell us the story of this man, Daniel Leonard, who he was, what happened to him in your presentation with the facts and the photos. And I will transfer the stage to you and maybe move aside.
Thank you very much. It is not easy task to say or to explain Daniel or Dionysius Leonard's story in 30 minutes. First of all, about who he was. In original documents and his ID documents, he runs under the name Dionys. But the family and friends, and he himself sometimes, in his signature, they called him Daniel. He was a young Jewish man born originally in 1912 in Budapest, but a family moved after the World War I to Slovakia because the father, Adolf Leonard, was from Slovakia, and the mother, Teresa Leonard, was from Hungary. They moved to northwest Slovakia, to the town of Žilina, about which I will talk a little bit later, where the second child, the mother of Oli, Clara, also at home called Rachel, and was born. Žilina, this is the map of Czechoslovakia 1933, where actually both children received Czechoslovak formal education. Žilina is here. It's northwest of nowadays Slovakia, because now it is two countries, and it is very nice historical Slovak city. In right on the eve of the Holocaust, its population was about 18,000 people, I think. I mean 1/8. And the Jewish population in 1942, I think, was about 2,900 people, almost 3,000 people. Little bit more about what family was doing or what family was it. It was a modest Jewish family. Adolf Leonard had a small business of cleaning windows. Originally, he even had few employees. Then, in 1930s, as we all know, there was a big depression in Czechoslovakia, mostly 1931, 1934. He had problems like many other businessmen. Family had problems, and the life wasn't easy. Really, learning these sources, one can understand. They were living, but sometimes they had problems. Teresa had to tailor and had to also work. And children were raised in a normal Jewish modest family. Not only they were educated in Jilina in normal schools, but also the whole family they were Zionists. They were supporters of Zionism, and both Daniel, Dionys, and Clara were members of the Zionistic youth organization called Hashomer Hatzair, also left-wing youth organization. And Daniel was the first one who tried to make Aliyah, who tried to move to the territory where we are now. And he, in 1933, but illegally, moved to Tel Aviv. He lived in Tel Aviv for 2 years. It is very difficult, I didn't succeed yet to establish more details. We only know that he was arrested by the officials as an illegal immigrant, and he was deported back to Czechoslovakia. And the family, both parents and the sister who followed him, didn't succeed to meet him, and they were also arrested and also deported back to Czechoslovakia. As Oli already mentioned, Daniel was of specific, even his sister told, was of specific nature, and one can understand this from sources and even from the memoirs of those who met him in 30s, before the war or during the war. He was artistic soul. He was a man with a simple education of the 4 years of grammar school and the council school, which is Mešťanka in Slovak. But he was a person who read a lot. He really swallowed books, and it is visible on the testimony he wrote later. And some historians, even in Poland today, think that he had some higher education. But it's what he got from the literature, and he, as an artistic soul, was into poetry and music. I was very surprised to find out that he actually originally wanted to become a singer. He didn't succeed. His education also wasn't so high, so he worked most of the time as a waiter, but he tried to write his own poems, and he had also wanderer's shoes. He liked to travel when he had some money, and in 1937 he traveled to Prague, to the capital, and he met this person whose self-portrait you see, the painter Stefan Bednar. Stefan Bednar was a Slovak young man, a painter, getting quite famous in caricature in those days. He met Daniel or Dionys, he met in Prague, and in his memoirs, which were published in 80s of the 20th century, during the communism, he speaks about him quite a lot, and he says, I read a few of his poems and I understood that these had been written with the talent, and he was asked by Daniel to put him in touch with some Czech poets, because Daniel wanted to establish himself as an artist as well. So he made him a meeting with Czech poet Halas, and Daniel wrote this poem in Rachov, which is Subcarpathian Russia of those days, very eastward territory of Czechoslovakia. It's called Samota, Loneliness, Sonety Tulaka, Sonnets of the Wanderer. It's been translated, and I think it's the base for the song we will hear. Anyhow, Stefan Bednar, to make it shorter, Stefan Bednar writes in his memoirs, I was in awe how much this poor Jewish boy, a waiter, learned by himself about the music, about the poetry. He was a specific self-educated person, a little bit non-practical, but very interesting guy. Why I mention this is also that he appears in Daniel's story again after Daniel's escape from Maidan, and we will talk about it. As we all know, in 1938 there were very tough times and very tragic times for the statehood of Czechoslovakia and for the Czechoslovak state as a state. Because of Hitler's aggressive politics and the politics of appeasement of the Western powers, Czechoslovakia was actually weakened in the fall 1938, and in Munich, high powers decided Czechoslovakia will have to cede territories to Nazi Germany. Later on, they decided Slovak part will cede territories to Hungary. What happened in Slovakia was that a specific party, a very right-wing conservative party, we say party of Slovak Catholics, or majority of its electorate would be Slovak Catholics, got into power in October 1938. Its name was Hlinka Slovak People's Party, Hlinková Slovenská ľudová strana, HSLS. And this party, when they got to power, they also proclaimed in early October, few days after the autonomy was declared, still Czechoslovak Republic, but autonomy, they proclaimed that they are ready to follow German examples in Jewish question including. And this went on, and from night to morning, Jews started to be attacked violently. 7,000 Jews they tried to push over the new borders. They didn't make new laws yet, but it was visible that the situation for the Jewish population is going to be very difficult. And on March 13, 1939, Hitler called the most influential politician within this party, Josef Tiso, a Roman Catholic priest also, to whom he said, either you blitzschnell claim, you declare the independence of Slovakia, or we will no more pay any attention to what happens to you, which was a real threat because Hungary wanted territories back, and they later tried to get them. And next day, on March 14, the Slovak state was declared independent. I don't want to talk too much about the Slovak state. It is a very specific topic, but I will talk about what system was it and what it meant for the Jewish community. It was an authoritarian state with an authoritarian political regime. Tiso, first prime minister, later president, was a real collaborator with Hitler, and the whole regime was conducting very systematic anti-Semitic policy against about 90,000 Jews, 89,000 Jews living at the territory, very systematically from April 1939, when the first definition of the term Jew was adopted, until the very end of the regime in May 1945. What it meant? It meant that tens, maybe hundreds of anti-Jewish legal norms were adopted. Situation gradually went through various stages, from limiting number of Jews in certain professions through very graduating severe Aryanization policy, meaning stripping Jews of their property, all kinds of property, through banning almost everything, even the postal secret, to have up until 1941, when 1941, when the Jewish code, so-called Żydowski Codex, the Jewish code, the summarization of all it, in September 41 was adopted. It was the most extensive anti-Jewish legal norm in the history of this, most extensive any legal norm in the history of this state, and it was very, very severe. They like to say that it's more strict than the Nuremberg laws. What it meant for the Leonhards as a family, one can imagine. They went through all this. They were stripped of property. Adolf Leonhard's license was cancelled. Family suffered. Clara managed to escape to Denmark in 1939. But Daniel stayed in Slovakia with parents, but not to be burdened for them maybe. And also trying to escaping, he joined a group of Zionists, young Zionists, and he lived with them in various places. And they were trying to live like they would probably live here if they succeeded to get here. They lived in a community, they had a joint budget, they were working on various projects, building projects, working very hard. They divided their responsibility. He's writing about it in his letters to Clara to Denmark. Unfortunately, they didn't succeed. They tried several times to live legally. They didn't succeed. Every time it collapsed on something. Not every time he says what happened. And he was quite depressed in 1941, and he voluntarily went into the small labor camp to be in this labor camp, probably not to be at home because there was such a poverty. In 1941, this was a common situation in Slovakia, and in late 41, there were 64,000 Jews out of 89,000 unable to make a living, to live from month to month from their own property, because the property was either blocked and they could only withdraw 1,000 crowns per week, which was very little for the families, if they had any account. And their businesses were Aryanized already, means given to somebody else or cancelled at all, and completely the situation was very bad. What the regime did, they were trying to find a solution first to build big labor camps. They didn't do it. They started to build 2, Sered and Novaki, but they found out that it's very costly, it takes a long time, and there is tens of thousands of Jews, so they wanted to do something. And then they meet in October 41, they meet Hitler in Wolfschanze and Himmler during one meeting with Reich representatives of the Slovak state. He gives them a question, how many Jews do you have? And Alexander Mach, the Minister of Interior, tells him, we have about 90,000 Jews in Slovakia. Himmler says, we will need them. And Mach said in 1942, when the deportation of Jews started, we want to rid ourselves of the Jews with the help of Germans. And he says, this is how the whole idea came. We met Himmler, and Himmler asked us how many, and we said, okay. At the beginning of 1942, deportations started to be prepared. First of all, 20,000 young people were supposed to be sent to general government, nowadays occupied, part of nowadays occupied Poland. Deportation started on March 25th, 1942, and lasted by October 20, 1942, and about 58,000 Jews were deported in cattle wagons, very brutally harassed and actually